Hello, and welcome back to the Quantum Health Connection podcast. Thank you so much for being here. I'm your host, Vanessa Bolden, with my incredible co-host, Heather Crimson. Today, we're sharing an interview we did with Dr. Larry Malerba. You're going to love this interview. He's the founder of, or the creator of, All Things Homeopathy YouTube channel. That's how I actually found Dr. Larry Malerba and got interested in his work. And his videos are really incredible, top-notch. You can learn a ton from them, even if you're just a client or just want to learn homeopathy, you want to learn more about homeopathy. His information is really, really quality. He's graduated from Michigan State University. He's an osteopathic physician, graduated from Des Moines University. He did residency training in Albany. He actually is in New York, and he has 40 years of practicing classical homeopathy with his wife, Mary, who's also a homeopath as well, which I think is really interesting. You'll find this out in the episode, how his wife also became a homeopath after just, hearing him talk about it so much, I think. So he's also the former president of the Homeopathic Medical Society of New York State. He's the author of 3 books. I have 2 here: Green Medicine and Dynamic Medicine, which I absolutely would recommend anybody who's interested in homeopathy to get Dynamic Medicine for sure. I finished it, and it's an easy, digestible read and really helps you understand homeopathy. So yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Larry, as he asked us to call him, got such a big heart. I mean, you can just really feel in this episode how much he cares, Vanessa, and how deep his knowledge of homeopathy is, and because he has just so many years of practicing. And it's also just fascinating to me that he learned homeopathy simultaneously while he was learning or becoming an osteopath with that medical degree. And it's also just very, fascinating that he just went right into homeopathy. Yes, he can practice osteopathy, but he chooses homeopathy. And how beautiful his journey has been, all the serendipities, and his practice is very, I would say, very clean. Like, he's just really pure in the way he works, and using the real heart of homeopathy, he stays tried and true, and he gets great results. So I think this is such a beautiful episode, and listeners who are at all interested in homeopathy, who are new to it, as well as listeners who are maybe more well versed, everybody can gain something from this episode.
Yeah, absolutely. I really enjoyed chatting with him. It was a lot of fun, and you really feel his passion for this medicine. And like you said, he's choosing that, even though he has other training. This is his preference, and this is where he gets the best results. And, doing it for 40 years is like, that's amazing. And he really has a passion of helping people understand homeopathic medicine, what it is, how it works, guiding his clients through that. And, has a big understanding of the medical establishment and why it is the way it is, and how that drives dysfunction basically in our bodies and in our whole societal systems. So I really appreciate his work and appreciate him staying. I appreciate the traditional work that he's doing. His homeopathy work is very traditional, and I appreciate seeing the success in that and the fruition of the classical version of homeopathy as well. So we really hope you enjoyed this episode. It was really fun, and we really appreciate Dr. Larry Malerba coming on. And check out his books as well. Check out his YouTube channel, All Things Homeopathy. And yeah, thanks so much for joining us on this episode. Hello, welcome to the Quantum Health Connection podcast, Dr. Larry. We are so excited to have you here. Thank you so much for coming.
Hi, Vanessa. Hi, Heather. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate you inviting me.
Yes, it's such a great, I mean, we really appreciate your time. We know you're a very busy doctor. We'd love to hear about how you started off from, you have a doctor of osteopathy, right?
Yes,
And then
correct.
how did homeopathy come in? Really, you said it came in early on, that you basically evolved as a healer with both of these approaches. So how did that happen? I'm so curious.
I had the lucky stroke of luck I got accepted to medical school, and that summer before attending my first year, I picked up Planet Medicine by Richard Grossinger, and I started to read it, and there was a really fascinating chapter about homeopathy, which I had never heard of before. And then I didn't think much of it, but I thought it was fascinating. And then I went to med school, and within the first week of being there, I looked up at the TV screen schedule that was there, always running in the main lobby, and I saw that there was a introductory lecture on homeopathy. So I said, "Oh, I got to go see this," you know. And I attended, and it was the one of the family practice physicians who taught at the school and practiced in a clinic there too was giving the lecture about homeopathy, and he wound up doing it on a weekly basis. So I kept attending his classes and bugging him with questions and following him around, and then like a couple weeks later, my wife and I were out hunting around for stuff for our new apartment, looking around at yard sales, and I found this diploma that looked ancient, and it was behind glass in a wood frame, and it looked really yellowed. And I looked at it, and it said on the top, it said University of Iowa in Latin because it said University Iowensis. And then it's beneath it, it said Similia Similibus Curanter. And then there was a name of the doctor, and there were the names of faculty members, and it was dated 1896. So
Wow.
I was shocked. I was stunned. I couldn't believe this weird combination of events, you know. And so I figured, all right, you know, I still didn't know much about homeopathy, but I said, okay, here, I gave the person $15 for the diploma, took it home, put it aside. And then I look back on it and I say, holy moly, that was some synchronicity in my life
Oh
that
yeah.
led me straight to homeopathy. So I wound up with every free moment of my time visiting Dr. Hotchner in his office and watching him treat patients both in his office and in the family practice clinic. And then each summer between med school, I spent all summer, you know, precepting with him and learning about homeopathy. And as time went on, he began to trust me more. And at a certain point, we would we would both take the case of the new patient, and then afterwards we would discuss it together and choose a remedy. And then it reached a point where one day he just looked at me and said, "Why don't you take this next one?" I was like, "What?" And so he started letting me take cases for new patients in the clinic, you know, and then I would consult him. And that's how I got into homeopathy while I was in my first year of med school. So I learned about the two systems of medicine side by side, and I think it was a real stroke of luck.
That's incredible. What an apprenticeship too. I think that's how it should be for everyone to have that opportunity. But that is so serendipitous. It's yeah, it was meant to be.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Beautiful to learn both of those things in at the same time because we need to call there are moments and places for both, right, of these things. And I think that's really important. So it's like that's really great that you have both of those modalities. And I love that the apprenticeship, like, and how the case tasting, it's like I was a special ed teacher in my formal life, right? And when did I actually learn how to become a teacher? When I was in the classroom, standing in front of the students and actually having to do it and then actually being with them and doing it, right? Same thing with being a homeopath. You learn by your experience and by doing and taking the cases and doing those things. And I was just saying to you before, as we were, getting on, as we were conversating before we recorded about how I, love learning from you and your All Things Homeopathy, YouTube channel. And you used to put out cases. I don't know if you still do, you might. And like, I'd be like, oh, like reading the cases, and then you'd be like, oh, you think about what the remedy is. I think that's so great because it's like so supportive for homeopaths or people who want to learn about it. And even in your book, Dynamic Medicine, you did the same thing, which I loved. It was like, oh, what's the remedy choice? And then I'd go back and I'd look and be like, oh yeah, I was right. Like, awesome. Like, it's like fun for me. So it's like a great way to even learn and grow. And with homeopathy, I find it to be like this, like, never-ending study, right? It's like it's really a never-ending study of learning, like, and there's just so much information. And you, even if you know Calcarea carbonica, you could like learn it more in depthly, and especially from different homeopaths who view it just a little bit differently. And it's just so great to have multitude of experiences. So
Definitely. There's the thing about that clinic where this doctor was practicing is the patients would walk in and the nurse would say, do you want conventional treatment or do you want homeopathic treatment? And then they'd triage them in different directions to different people. And so
Wow.
you got to see both going on at the same time. And sometimes people who were seeking homeopathy still needed conventional care and vice versa, of course, you know. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's pretty cool. And I do
Sounds
think
like a
that,
pretty progressive school you're at. I mean, that's what I think I've heard about osteopathy compared to just the traditional MD or whatever. But because
Mhm.
I've never heard that where they have it integrated unless it's like a homeopath or a naturopathic situations, school. But so this is really awesome that you were able to have that experience early on in your career.
I'd
Mhm.
say it was kind of progressive in the sense that, yes, it's more progressive, I think, than allopathic medicine. And they have a strong focus on, primary care. And this particular doctor had graduated from the top of his class from that same school, and they wanted him to come back and teach. And he said, well, I'll come back and teach, but you have to let me do homeopathy. So
I
it was
love that.
kind of an anomaly, And,
Okay.
and then later on, uh, like by second year, I think it was, me and some students decided to form a holistic medicine club,
Oh, mhm.
and we asked the administration for meeting place, and they said, "Yep, okay, you can use this room." And then just before we were about to begin on day one, we got a notice saying, come to the office and talk to us. And they said, sorry, we can't let you do that. So they shut us down and said because it was about their accreditation, that was their explanation. So then we wound up having the same group meet literally across the street from the med school at the Unitarian Church where they
Oh
let
yeah.
us have meetings there.
Perfect.
There you go.
Perfect.
You found a workaround, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe
It
not as
was,
progressive as you thought. Now, do you practice? You just practice, from what I understand, you just practice classical homeopathy for the last what, like 30 years or so. You've been doing that, and
yep.
you use your osteopathy, your osteopathic degree. Do you use that?
Yep. I used to do, osteopathic manipulation, like body work.
Yeah.
And I just gradually phased that out because I just felt like I want to do spend all my time doing homeopathy, and
Yeah.
people can go get osteopathic care elsewhere, but they couldn't find homeopathy elsewhere,
Yeah.
and my passion was homeopathy. So that's all I do. And then once the kids were old enough, my wife went back to school, got her RN, and then she joined me. And since she was already, had listened to me for years babble on about homeopathy, she knew everything about it. So she started helping me see patients, and then she started seeing her own patients, and that's how it's been for a long time
Oh,
now.
so the two of you were both homeopaths. That's incredible. I love
Mhm.
that little part of your story. And the thing is, like, it's so funny that you say that, like, she knew so much about homeopathy. My family does too. It's so funny. They're like, I'll quiz like my son because he says he wants to be a homeopath, my youngest, and I'll be like, oh, so what remedy sticks their feet out of the covers? And he'll name them. He's like, oh yeah, pulsatilla,
Oh,
sulfur.
you're quizzing him already. That's
Yeah,
good.
he's
That's
like
good.
so funny and it's so cute. And he's very curious and inquisitive in nature, but he likes learning it. So of course I'm gonna foster that, because hopefully at least if he doesn't become a homeopath, he's gonna know how to use it with his children, right? And his family, which is invaluable information to have, right? So I love that like she already knew the information, right? From learning from you all of these
Yeah.
years, like through that. That's really cool. Really cool.
Yeah, my kids, you know, being being pig-headed like I am, they didn't want to be
It's okay.
doctors or practitioners, So they went their own way, and they all became software engineers. Um, but now they're in their 30s, and we still get phone calls all the time. Hello, Dad, I got this going on. What remedy should I take? So
On-call homeopath. How nice for them, right?
that's right. That's right.
So Dr. Larry, now I understand you practice classical homeopathy and you're not really a proponent of so-called new age or whatever you want to call it. Like the more, what is the word we use for them? I forget.
Practical, new
Practical.
age.
Yes.
I don't know.
So tell us about your philosophy around that and how you envision like maybe even the future of homeopathy. Is there any need you can see in any time in the future where we would want to open it up to be more of a, I guess, practical or however you'd call it approach?
Yeah, I half of the labels I don't really understand because it keeps changing, but um, you know, the at bottom I'm classical, but I'm always open to new ideas and new ways of thinking about things and
Mhm.
new ways of thinking about remedies and new ways about analyzing cases. Uh, I tend to shy away from mixopathy where you're giving more than one remedy at a time. I would
Mhm.
only do that in an emergency where someone's really, needs in immediate help. Um, but I think we live in the homeopathic Wild West, this time we live in, and it's good and it's bad. It's good because people are out there thinking in new ways, experimenting in new ways. And
Mhm.
I always personally find it to be somewhat of a conflict within myself because
Mhm.
I don't want to experiment, so to speak, on my patients. And I tend to want to wait around and watch until some new remedy or some new method or some new idea starts to get fleshed out and proven in practice and actual experience. And then I'll start to dip my feet in because I don't want to just follow any new idea because half of them are not that dependable and some of them are good and some of them are bad. So I think we live in an interesting time, and I just think that again, it's a double-edged sword where like even my channel, my YouTube channel is intended to educate people about the solid fundamentals. Nevertheless, people come across it and they start experimenting wildly, and that's not what I want them to do. I don't want them to jump into self-treatment. I don't want them to pop remedies left and right, and
Yes.
and
Can we talk about that?
I can't control that, right? It's just I'm
Yeah.
putting the information out there,
Mhm.
hoping that it will be received well, and um, trying not to contribute to the chaos, and even to practitioners, I think, who there's a lot of practitioners who kind of discover homeopathy and they have an allopathic mindset, and
Yeah.
they basically practice homeopathy as if it's allopathic, and it's the results are very poor and tend not to go well when you use remedies in the wrong way, of course. So, it's there's good and lots of bad out there.
So many things I want to touch on that you just said, like the self-prescribing and then the using the remedies too frequently. People don't realize how that can have a negative impact, right? It's supposed to be the minimum dose. And
Right,
that's why seeing a homeopath is really important because they're going to help guide you on that minimum dose, right? And the time and the space that's needed is so different. That mindset shift is so different from allopathy, right? Because we're so conditioned, right? I got to take this every day. I got to keep doing it. And it's like, you just prescribe me one dose and you expect this to last for a couple months? Yes.
right.
And that's very hard. It's very hard in the modern world. And then when you don't get quick results, people want to move on to the next remedy or to
Right,
the next thing. But that's like, it takes a long time to develop chronic illness. It takes time to unwind it, and we have to like move through it. So there's that.
right.
And I'm very much agreeing on the multiple remedy thing. And I think if we're going to experiment, we need to experiment on ourselves, not our patients, or like
Probably so,
first
yeah. Right,
before, like if you're going to dabble in that thing. And a friend and I were just talking about that recently. I'm like, before I use any of these newer remedies, if I even decide to, or anything like that, I'm going to practice it on myself before I give it to a client. Like there's no way because I need to know and experience that. because they shouldn't be the experiment, right? And classical homeopathy has this long-standing testament of how, effective it is. And we've seen that proven time and time again. So we can say with good, consciousness that we know it works effectively and well, and we're giving them something that's, good for their body. So yeah.
Yeah, I used to have a friend, he's no longer with us, and he was insistent on the idea that you had to prove the remedy on yourself if you were going to learn about it. And
Mhm.
I wouldn't go that far, but
Yeah.
I understood his perspective, like
Yeah.
he was a proponent of immerse yourself in the remedy, feel it, experience it, and then you'll know it.
Yeah.
Uh, but I'm not sure, I don't have the time and energy to do that. And I don't
Yeah.
want to be, you know, reacting to remedies all the time while I'm trying to treat my patients. So,
Yeah, that would be a big challenge, I think, too. Yeah,
So,
100%.
so Dr. Larry, what do you see as like from a homeopathic perspective as the cause of disease? Like, how do we become ill?
Mm.
oh, you got to ask me the big question, right? Okay.
You can break it down in any which way you would
Yeah,
prefer.
yeah, no, no. It's a great question. Uh, we become ill in many ways, I think. Negative influences hit us. We encounter some kind of adversity, and it throws off the life force. It throws the life force out of balance, right? And the life force starts to complain first by generating little minor symptoms, right? Like I thought I was getting a headache, but I didn't, and my back started to ache a little bit, and or I had a little touch of heartburn, and then the more you ignore it, the more there is a tendency for it to grow and develop as its complaints get louder, and the life force is trying to say, listen to me, I need help in order to get back into balance. And that's what a good remedy will do. And so I think what causes disease, the interesting thing about that is like the vast majority of people in the world don't think of all the everyday events as potential contributors to illness, right? They go, oh, he fell and skinned his knee and he started crying, and I told him to act like a man and stop crying, and you know
Mhm.
you know bug up and get tough and be a don't be a like a girl, and that kind of stuff. And people don't realize how those things contribute to creating disease. Ultimately it starts somewhere as a little seed that gets planted, and then on top of that more things happen and more things happen. I was a little kid at school, and my friends called me names and made fun of me, and then it just goes on and on and on, and it eventually manifests, oftentimes first as physical symptoms and then later on as psychological symptoms. And if only the world knew that you could treat that stuff, and we could set someone back into balance and help them with these problems that no one thinks there's really treatment for, or people just think they're normal parts of life. They don't even see it as part of an imbalance of the life force.
Yeah, I love that. Heather and I, we talk a lot about like how suppression causes disease, right? Like just what you just said in general, like you're telling that your child to suppress its emotion that needs to be released, right? And how this kind of creates like a blockage, right, in the energy, or it's like a knot or a block or something that is not flowing the way it should be. So I kind of we have kind of summed it down to, the root cause of the disease is suppression in a big way. Not, of course, there's other things, traumas and big T traumas, little T traumas, all the things they add up. And I believe it's also ancestral, like what's passed down to us as well is
Of
also part of
course. Yep.
it. And yeah, and homeopathy does have that power, and that's because it's working on that physical, mental, and emotional plane, right? So maybe touch a little bit on how you see the difference between allopathy and homeopathy and how it works on that mental, emotional piece as well. It takes that into consideration.
Right. So we know all about the idea behind Herring's law, right? So that as disease gets worse, it goes deeper into the system and it affects uh, deeper parts of the organism until it reaches the psychological level. And therefore, the least threatening and safest kind of illness to have would be a skin condition, right? Because it's on the surface and it's the least sort of threatening thing. And so you have allopathic medicine, which all it does is it just tries to thwart any symptom that pops up. That's the whole, you could just sum it up as that, right? It's You're going to give you this drug for that symptom and this drug for that symptom and this drug for that symptom, and they're just trying to stop the symptoms from happening without any awareness whatsoever of how that strategy affects the health of people and how these things are connected. So it doesn't connect the dots. It never connects the dots between the rash my kid used to have that got suppressed with the cortisone and the asthma that he developed a year later, right? Nobody thinks about that. They just see it as separate things. So conventional medicine, it's really the scientific, the scientific materialism, the worldview of scientific materialism that breaks things up into little boxes as if we can do that, as if they are separate and study them separately and treat them separately as if that's okay. And it's not, because all is one. Everything, all the symptoms that you have are by definition one, right? So we can't treat them in isolation. And when we try to do that, we further throw the life force into imbalance, making it harder to ever find our way back to a better state of health. And that's all the conventional medicine does, right? I mean, it's like
Mhm.
just pill after pill after pill after pill, and people don't understand. And even I'm shocked, how hard it is to get people to understand that. So even some of my patients who I've seen for years will come in and off the cuff just tell me, "Oh, that that joint was hurting me so much. I went to the orthopedic doctor and he stuck cortisone in that joint, And I'm like, "Oh, why did you do that?" But it's like it's very hard to get people to understand that perspective. And there's a practical side of it too. I understand that people have different levels of tolerance for pain and suffering, and not everybody is the same. And so you
Yeah.
have to allow for that too, right? So I'm always negotiating with my patients. Okay, all right, if you have to, you can take that ibuprofen, but try not to, and so on and so forth. And it's a constant battle to get people to understand the powerful effect that drugs can have in suppressing symptoms and how that drives the illness deeper into the life force and creates bigger problems on deeper levels.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's a very different paradigm, and it's the holistic. It's more of what we were talking about metaphysical before we came on. It's understanding the connection, everything's connected. And I love how you said the symptom, it's like one symptom, like everything is basically compromising the vital force. And that's what needs to be addressed, is the person as a whole. And that's why homeopathy is so different from allopathy, in the sense that the time you spend with each patient, the attention you give to how they became who they are in this moment, and how their life force and their whole being is expressing itself. And it's a very different from just the cookie cutter factory process of
Hmm.
allopathy. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I always say to my patients, it's by definition, it's all one thing. How could it be otherwise? It's all happening to you. It's you, right?
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
That's
a good one. I love it. I love that one. Yeah. So tell us a little bit of how you think homeopathy is working, because you gave a couple explanations in your book, but like, what do you think? Because it doesn't, and I love that you said like it doesn't really even matter like what it means. Like it just matters that it does work, right? But
exactly.
there's a lot of nuanced, different conversations about that. But what do you think? Like, how do you think it's working on the body? Mhm.
Well, yeah, like you can name all kinds of mechanisms by which we think this is the way it works, right? And it became apparent to me, like when I first encountered homeopathy, I was really curious about that, and I started digging deep and reading and thinking and trying to figure out how does this stuff work, you know? And then at some point early on, I just said, this is a waste of time. All that matters is that we treat people and that it works. That's all that matters, you know? And so that does bring me to the kind of metaphysical perspective where um, we live in the age of scientific materialism. And the vast majority of people tend to think, well, I wouldn't say that, but a lot of people have a left brain perspective on the world, right? They want to, they identify with the scientific perspective, and that's the way they see the world, meaning they break things up into parts, they break things down into subparts, and they think that they are going to find answers by doing that,
Mhm.
by breaking things down through reductionism, right? And so, as if the answer is somewhere inside the liver, on this lobe over here, in this cell, inside that cell, and we'll figure out that's where it is. We finally discovered it. It's in the gene, it's in the this, it's in the that, you know. And I think they're all barking up the wrong tree. It's just completely wrong thinking. You cannot reduce a holistic therapy into a reductionist perspective. It makes no sense. It's a holistic therapy, and the only way you can understand it is holistically. And it doesn't matter to me whether we know why it works. That's just a symptom of the age we live in,
Yeah.
right? It's there are so many people who want to know why, and they won't believe their own eyes. They won't even believe their own experiences unless they can have it explained to them why. That's
Mhm.
how crazy it is, right? That everyone is so programmed by the conventional medical world, by conventional scientific thinking,
Mhm.
that they will dismiss their own experiences, their own subjective feelings and intuition and so on, because they'll say, well, this can't be so because science says it can't be so, right? And so it's crazy, and I'm always trying to figure out ways how to explain that to people, but it's not easy. It's not easy. And so that really makes you then think further about, I mean, I'm not trying to be arrogant, but you know, in life, people are at different stages of awareness and development. That's what life is all about, right?
Mhm.
So some people are more emotionally aware. Some people are more spiritually aware. Some people are more aware of their own physical bodies. And everybody's different. And so some people are kind of just beginners in life, and some people are very advanced and have an awareness of these things, and they're further along the path, right? You
Yeah.
know, so therefore they're going to have, you know, fewer incarnations to go through before they hit the jackpot or whatever you want to call it, you know. So so you have to be patient and understanding of people who don't get it, but there's a lot of people in this age of scientific materialism who have a very rudimentary understanding of health, and that rudimentary understanding is reinforced by the conventional allopathic perspective, and they get locked into it, and it it requires a lot of courage and a lot of freedom of thought to be able to break free from that. And that's not easy. You know, again, most people don't have that kind of courage. Some
Mhm.
people are born with it. I think the people who have it, they're kind of born with it, you know.
Mhm.
And the ones who don't, they're not there yet. And so you have to be able to meet them where they're at and guide them along. That's the way I see it, you know.
Do
Yes,
you
meet
feel like
them.
where they're at has any impact on how the remedy affects them, how it acts?
Mm,
No, I don't think so. I think, in fact, if they're not very far along the path, the remedy can have a profound effect on them. And but even then, in a certain sense, it may be wasted on them because they they may walk away and go, well, I feel better. I saw Dr. Malerba and he made me feel better. And they go on and they go back to allopathic medicine. And then when they're in a pinch again, they come back to me 3 years later. So sometimes they don't learn as much as they could from the experience, right? Because they're so deeply mired in that other perspective that it doesn't make them think, or they don't even make the connection. They don't even realize that the fact that they started getting along with their spouse better and their relationship improved, that had something to do with the remedy, you know. And so these things are hard to hard to get people to see things sometimes. But
yeah.
all that matters is that they're getting better. That's what counts. You're helping them along the path.
We don't realize that our vital force is not just about our physical. It's about our mental emotions, how we interact in the world, how we show up in the world, how we react in our relationships, our connection, all of that. It's all part of it. It's very spiritual. So yeah. And I think like in my case, like you don't know my story, but I grew up extremely conventional. I didn't even know other medicines existed. Like I didn't even know that was a thing. And then I had a medical intervention that really, I mean, I had some health challenges before, but then it really just, put me in a downward spiral. And I went to the conventional medicine model and it never would, I couldn't get anywhere. So then I went to the functional medicine model, which to me is really allopathic medicine just in a different way because you are just looking for that diagnosis. You're looking whether you're looking for whether it's mast cell activation syndrome or you're looking for that it's mold toxicity. To me, you're still looking for that diagnosis
Right.
instead of looking to how to feel from within out, right, or heal at that deep rooted level. So I can't like sometimes it can be like a crisis situation that changes your perspective and catapults you into a different, paradigm shift in mindset, right? And
Right.
then like with the remedies, when you were talking, like I always really hope like a parent will come to me and it happens like for an acute situation. And then like homeopathy really makes a difference. And then they become a believer. And I'm like, look, now you get it. Like it,
Right.
because they're like, how can a homeopathic remedy cure an infection? Or like they'll ask those questions. Or if I have this diagnosis, how does the remedy work? I'm like, so it's because they were so conditioned. It's the conditioning really is the main issue that I see.
Right.
So I'm like, but so when it works and I get it right and it works really well, and I'm like, yes, I think I made them a believer. Let's go.
Well, I remember first seeing that doctor at medical school giving his lectures on homeopathy. He was talking about Herring's law and how things unwind by going backwards in time, you know. And I was puzzled by that. And so I would wait until after class and I would go up and grill him with questions. And I was like, so, so you're saying that if the remedy works, you're going to get back that strep throat you had 3 years ago exactly like it was before in the same. And he's like, no, 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 it's not that literal. And, and I was trying to understand it all. And, you
Yeah.
know, so yeah.
Yeah. That's a whole nother paradigm shift too, getting people to understand that direction of cure and then old symptoms show back up. That is a good sign. And it's a lot, or skin symptoms coming back that you suppress, like with I think you said it was your son who had asthma, right? Like those things are good. And that we talk a lot of, Heather and I talk a lot about, fevers and acutes and how they actually are part of the healing process. And that really is how we really heal, right? When you can get those things again. So it's a lot of shifting and understanding when it comes to homeopathy for people to get accustomed to.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It gives me, it's always a conundrum when you meet a new patient, you take the case, now you're finishing up, now you're trying to explain to them what to expect. And you want to say enough to help them understand, but you don't want to scare them to death. And it's not easy because then if you say you may get back old symptoms that you've had before, some people it'll provoke an anxiety attack, you know.
Yep.
And so it's a fine line you got to walk when you're educating different people who are at different levels of understanding and have different levels of tolerance for learning new things and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. Depends on their constitution, right? If they're more of a phosphorus or a Seneca Malvern, right? They're not going to
Right.
do well with, hearing that situation,
If
right?
if you're a sulfur, he'll just tell me back his theory, what he really thinks. It doesn't matter.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. That's a good one. Yeah.
Have you ended up specializing in any particular client or patient population or any field of study? What are your pet areas?
No, no, no. I don't specialize in anything in particular. We take all comers, children, adults, everything. But I have a favorite thing, which is I love to treat young adults. I love to take cases of young adults because they're so open to the possibilities, and you're getting to them at an early phase in life, like little kids. It's different. They're not going to understand what I'm doing, right? They're just little kids. But young adults who are just opening themselves up to the world, you have a real opportunity
Mhm.
to teach them things and to alter their health in such a way that it changes the whole trajectory of their life going forward. Whereas when you treat someone who's 50 years old and they've had a big, long train of problems, that's a big, giant mess you got to unravel. It takes a lot of time and a lot of work. But for a young adult, I like to sit there and chat with them and get to know them, and you can give them insight and help them learn about things. And that's why I like case taking in general too. That's my favorite thing, is just taking a new case. The whole thing is to be able to meet anyone who walks in off the street and be open to them and try to understand them and not be judging them, and not getting stuck on anything that bothers me about them, and trying to truly allow them to open up and trust me so that they'll tell me things that they might not tell me otherwise, because of course that's crucial to being able to figure out the case, right?
Yep.
And that's what I love the most, is just that meeting that person and asking them questions and trying to get it to a point where the it doesn't even feel like a doctor's visit anymore. It's a conversation where I'm just,
Yeah.
you know, asking asking things that lead to this, and then this opens up and that subject opens up. And I mean, granted, you can go on forever. See that the flip side of that is you gotta, use your time well.
And
Uh,
you can also gain too much information sometimes. I find
right. Oh
I've
yeah,
done
yeah.
that. I'm like,
For
oh wait,
sure,
I
for
need to
sure.
not ask any more questions. You've done enough.
And
It,
and the way you approach that patient, I save the scary things for last, right? So
yeah,
if it's a kid or an adult, either way, it's like, oh, tell me what your favorite foods are. Everybody loves to answer that question, right? There's no problem there. But then when you get to the point where you say, tell me what your fears are,
yeah,
people can get defensive, and so I saved that for last, and they've gotten used to me and they trust me, and then you hit them with the hard questions in the end. That's what I like. That's what I enjoy. That process of learning how to get along with people, learning how to understand them, putting them at ease, cracking a joke here and there so that they can feel relaxed, and it doesn't feel to them like, in the end they should say, and as they often do, right? They say, wow, no doctor's ever asked me all those questions. No doctor's ever known this much about me in my whole life, and then you've done your job, right?
yeah, yeah. I love that. Treating children, they're I almost like them more pure in a way, like because they have had less suppression, right? There's less to clean up, like you said. And I've seen remedies act so quickly in my children and on deeper things that I thought would take time. And I'm like, wow, that was impressive because they're stronger because they haven't had as much suppressives as we've had. And it's funny when you said about the food, like tell me your favorite foods. It's good for kids, but people who are in chronic illness, I find, and they're really like been sick for a long time, they want to tell me the foods that they think I want them to eat. And I'm like,
That's
no, no.
right.
I'm like, tell me,
It's
like,
so hard.
yeah, I'm like, hey, stop. I'm like, no, no. What you could eat anything you want. What do you crave? Because
Right.
we're not tuned in, you
They can't
know?
even go there. They don't want to go
Yeah, they're
there.
not tuned into like what their body actually really does want at this moment. So,
And people are, because the medical system is so unhelpful in so many ways,
yeah,
people are left to their own resources, and the one thing that they can control is the food they put in their body, right? So then they hyper focus on that and and indoctrinate themselves in all kinds of nutritional theories of health, which all of them have pluses and minuses and partial truths and so on. But people go overboard, and then it's, I got to have this food in order to be healthy, or else I'm going to fall apart, and then it becomes almost a neurosis, right?
yeah,
There now we have umpteen million people with all kinds of allergies and food problems, and half the time you don't know, you can't tell, is it truly an allergy, or is this just that they've convinced themselves that
yeah.
this is the only way I have of controlling my health in this world, so
Hmm. So,
So,
go ahead, Heather.
well, I just want to know about how you balance like the time and the questions and the safety. And do you have a certain way that you go about helping create that safe space for a new client? I mean, a new patient, what do you even say to them about what you're going to do?
um I sit them down, I introduce myself, I talk about uh things like, oh, I see you're from this town, and
Mhm.
oh, and I see this, and we just try to make small talk before we get going. um and I explain to them, well, the first thing, I hit them hard at first with the coffee issue, because I don't want them to balk at the very end. So
Right.
uh so in the beginning, I look at the chart where it asks, do you drink coffee? And if they do, I say, well, would you be willing to not drink coffee for me? And most of them say okay, and you can tell some of them don't like that. So I try to broach that issue early on, and then I go back to it again later. Um, and then I just say, okay, so how can I help? What's going on? And I let them go. Um, and I know that the ideal, of course, everyone tells you the ideal is to let them talk themselves out until they're done. But I find that that's a little unrealistic. So
I think it depends on the client if they're ready to
yeah,
take this.
right, right. You could be there for days sometimes. And of course, some people think it's a therapy session and they want to do therapy.
Okay.
So I do tend to let them talk a little bit, and then I'll stop them and say, okay, so tell me more about, so you said you had this. When did that begin? And tell me more about that. And so I focus them then on what they think is the important thing, and then and work our way through like that without being too wide open. Um, and I try to make it fun around here in my office, where I have my SpongeBob guys and the dolls and my lava lamp, and it's just make it nice and comfortable in here so that people don't think they're in a doctor's office. I don't wear a white coat. I don't act like a doctor. I don't talk like a doctor, and try not to scare people, So,
Do you do only in-person sessions?
no, I do virtual sessions too. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I find it in person though, like I don't get to do it very often, because it's the nature of what I do, but there's something a little special about it when it's possible, you know?
Sure, sure. Well, I always encourage people to be here, but if they're too far away, of course,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I love
Because you
that.
can pick up a lot when people are in the room with you. And half the time I don't even think you realize. I don't realize what I'm picking up. I'm just feeling it, sensing it, and it
Hmm.
helps me to ask another question, and and then I look back on it later on and go, like, I'll see a patient, and then they'll check out, and my wife will sometimes check them out, and afterwards I'll go, what did you think about that person? What kind of vibe did you get from them? And just get their feedback, because it's hard to put into words sometimes what you're
Hmm.
feeling, what you're experiencing in front of someone, and you can't very well say it right then and there. So you have to process it later on
Hmm.
and try to make sense out of it all, what you just experienced.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes taking a case, people will be surprised when I say to them, I'm going to think about that for a little while because I do want to sit with the case and think about it longer because they want like, that, and I'm like, it's for your benefit, like for me, it's me doing a good job of making sure that I've go through your case longer and think about your case before
Sure.
making a quick decision. But you can't see some nuances, like sometimes on the camera, like if they're tapping their foot or they're playing with their fingernails, or like there's some things you just miss, that you might
Right.
see in person also, and it might also bring out more emotion or more things comes to the surface in person. So it's and when it happens, it's awesome. So yeah. I'm super curious, like Dr. Larry, like if you have any, like, if what do you do with like stuck cases? Like, if you ever get a stuck case, what do you do with that? Do you go to say recommend? Like what do you do with that?
When I get stuck on a case, sometimes I'll just hand it off to my wife and say, take the whole thing all over again.
Yeah,
Don't look at the chart, don't be influenced.
yeah.
And, that's one good way to do it, you know. Or I'll just go to my wife and say, can you look at this case for me and give me feedback and some ideas? So I have that advantage that we work together like that.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, beyond that, I'm not sure. Uh, you can repertorize it in different ways, or go back the next time with questions you hadn't thought of, and it's tricky. I don't often do that kind of thing where people say, "Oh, that's when you give sulfur to open up the case or whatever."
Mhm.
I tend not to do. I tend to just still look for the remedy that I think will will work, that I haven't tried yet.
Mhm. Mhm.
And a lot of times, cases they're just messy. People are in a bad state out there, and
Yeah.
it just requires sometimes hard work, and sometimes you have to cycle back to some remedy that
Yes.
worked previously and then stopped working, and sometimes you get the right remedy but in the wrong sequence with another remedy, and it starts to work and then it stops, and so there's a lot of
Or the potency, it's the right remedy, but not the right potency. I've had that, and switching the potency makes a difference, right? So I love that you have your wife to call on. Oh, that's really cool. Heather and I, we call on each other. We have other colleagues we call on, and I've actually just had a colleague of mine say, can you take my sister's case? Because I just don't. And I want you to just new, fresh eyes. And she's like, well,
yep.
I didn't think of that remedy, and that remedy fits so well. So like sometimes that is helpful. So I think that's really cool that you
Yeah,
have.
that illustrates how, the materia medica is like a living thing, in a sense that
Mm,
you and I can sit in a room and interview the patient,
mhm.
and when it's all over, we can talk about it, and you will have noticed certain things and interpreted certain things in certain ways, and I will have noticed different things and interpreted things in different ways. And so, if you're going to put that on paper into a materia medica, how do you do that, right? Because so
Yeah.
so different people add their different experiences gradually to the materia medica over time, as the remedy gets more and more solid and filled out, and you see different facets of it with time and experience, right? So it's not this static thing that, well, it has to be this way. No, it's like every time I think I understand the remedy, I see yet another exception to the rule, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that's so you got to really keep your mind open to that possibility that I'm looking at an introverted phosphorus type, or I'm looking at an
Deep
out
phosphorus could be introverted though.
right,
The
or
deep
an
space.
outgoing Nat Muir type or whatever. You got to be open to those possibilities.
I agree. I agree. It depends on how long that layer has been manifesting, I think, right? And I know I love reading George Vatukas because she does show that a lot of times in his writings, how it can like progress over time. And phosphorus might have been very extroverted, but now they're more introverted. And it's like,
Right,
oh, that's
right.
really interesting because you expect them to just be, sharing openly. So it's so I love that. It's really cool.
So
So
what are your plans for the future? What do you want to, or what are your visions for homeopathy in general? And then what are your individual hopes for how you will, like, what do you want to manifest with homeopathy for yourself?
I've always been, I think I'm a frustrated teacher. Uh, and also I'm a frustrated filmmaker. So when I was in high school, I remember sitting down in the guidance counselor's office and they looked at me and they said, "So what do you want to do with your future?" And I was stunned and dumbfounded I hesitated and then I said, "I think I want to be a filmmaker."
mm,
And so so fast forward all these years, and I've always been a good teacher, I think. That's one of my strengths.
you are.
So at one point I said, I just have to write this book,
Mm,
and I wrote the first book. I wrote Green Medicine, and I wrote that book as a broad perspective on holism
mm,
and it was intended to be a stealth educator about homeopathic principles. So if you read Green Medicine, it's always talking about this broad, holistic green perspective while sticking in homeopathic ideas in a stealthy manner so that people don't even realize they're getting homeopathic ideas. And that was my idea to do that. And so then I went searching and amazingly, synchronistically again, it all began when I sat down and read Planet Medicine with Richard Grossinger's book, and he published the book. Richard Grossinger was the head of North Atlantic Books, so
mm.
that was cool that my writing career began with that. But then I slowly began to realize that it's nice. And even before I had done the books, I had taught classes here locally to a variety of groups, and I figured with the books, I'll reach a wider audience. And
Mm.
then with time, we entered this age now where people don't read books anymore.
I
And
do.
so I grew frustrated with the idea of having to put so much energy into writing a book and then having not a whole heck of a lot of people, potentially read it. So then came the age of YouTube, and I went, wait a minute, I think I can reach more people in a quicker, easier way, and I could still be that educator that I wanted to be. And so I started making the YouTube videos, and then to my amazement, it grew and got stronger, and people were interested, and now everyone keeps demanding more Materia Medica videos. And so, you know, I'm like, okay, but I can only one of those Materia Medica videos takes like
I can imagine.
3 weeks of work
Yeah,
to
because they're
make it.
so in depth, they really
So it's
are.
like first I start with I gather all the bits of information from many sources, and I just write them on a piece of paper, and I write them down, right? Like, oh, antimonium crude doesn't like to be touched or looked at, right? I say that because I'm doing it right now. I'm working on antimonium crude.
Oh, good
And
one.
so then in the end, I have this pages of details, separate little fragments. Then I take it and I organize it into categories, all the fragments. Okay, here's the mentals, here's the generals, here's the modalities, here's the physicals. Then from that, I put it all in order and then I start to write a script out of it. And I, I've learned how to write a script in a way like I hope at least that it sounds like I'm just talking, sitting on the couch talking to people
Hmm.
without it sounding so academic or didactic, that
Mhm.
it's intended to be, conversational in tone, right? So even on my script, I'll write, you know, okay, so there, little things like that. Because when it comes to actually then the next step, which is recording it, even that is hard to do without sounding, rigid and rehearsed. So I'll read, so therefore, blah, 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 I'll record it in chunks, and then I got to put it all together. And then I have this program, which thankfully I discovered so many years ago. It was one of those deals where it said, "Oh, if you pay this much money, you get a lifetime membership." I said, "Hey, why not? I'll give it a try." And so I paid one fee in the beginning, and that was it to this program called Doodly. And you can put the print on the screen of the Doodly program. Then you can record your voice. Or actually, first I record my voice. Then I put the print on. Then you can time it. You can time the print to the audio, and that takes a ton of work. Timing the what I'm saying with what you're seeing written on the screen, and then I gather um, graphics to fit in, and that can be time consuming because it's really hard sometimes to find a graphic that will demonstrate some some idea, you know. But in the end, it's like I'm making a movie, I'm filmmaking, and I'm educating, and I'm doing the two things I love the most. So therefore, it's a
Yeah.
it's a ton of fun when it's not hard work.
Well, I appreciate your videos. I think they're really incredible. And All Things Homeopathy is a YouTube channel. And I highly recommend people, if they're interested in learning about homeopathy, to check it out. You were one of the first homeopaths I followed on YouTube, and I really I still enjoy listening to I'm like, oh, he's got a new one out. Again, you learn from other homeopaths.
Of course,
We all learn from each other. And it's
right,
always going to
definitely.
hear something that you didn't remember or never picked up on. And we're like, oh, I didn't know that. Like, yeah, and I read, like I said before, I read Dynamic Medicine. I do love to read real books personally. My all-time favorite, sitting in.
Thanks for the plug.
Yeah, and it was an excellent book, and I recommend it to all my clients to go ahead and grab a copy to learn and understand what homeopathy is, because I think it's very digestible for anybody to understand homeopathy. And I'm working on green medicine, so I'm excited to
Good.
get into this one as well. So
Yeah, let me know what you think.
yeah, I absolutely will. I just started it, so I'm excited, and I love a good book. So yeah.
Any parting words of wisdom as we wrap it up, Dr. Larry? This has been a really incredible and wonderful session with you, just to see like how you embody homeopathy, how you share it with the world, and just all of I mean, you just give so much. So we're so grateful for everything.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you guys inviting me. My parting words are I I wish the world would rally around RFK Jr. and support him because I think he's doing good work. And unfortunately, he's stuck in an administration that where he doesn't belong. But nevertheless, he himself is doing great work, and I'm hopeful. I'm hoping one of these days he's going to come out and change the regulations such that homeopathy is even more protected than it is now and is not under threat and gets pharma out of get it gets pharma's tentacles away from places where it doesn't belong. So I think he's the guy who has the best idea for starters, right? We have to separate corporate influence.
Yeah.
We have to separate pharma and big biotech from healthcare because
Mhm.
they're the ones that are dictating everything to the entire world. They're the ones that control the medical schools, they control the doctors, they control the medical journals, they control the media, right? And so Kennedy has the right idea. He's trying to break that down so that these things are independent again and free to think for themselves so that you know, we can start thinking about and learning about homeopathy and other things that are currently forbidden in the mainstream, you know. So that's my hope that it's going to lead somewhere positive for homeopathy, because it's been a long, hard struggle. I think, you know, we live in again, the age of scientific materialism, so it's not a easy historical time to be a homeopath, you know, because you don't fit in to the world around you, you know,
So true.
and so, you know, it's going to take time, but hopefully it'll get better.
I think it is going to get better. And I think I see more people being open to new things because the system is crumbling and failing. And
Right.
I'm sure you get a lot of clients like that too. So I get them. And they're like, yeah, well, I need help because this is not working. Right. So that when the systems start to crumble, then we can rebuild anew. And it's using something that we used in the past that's been really known to work very effectively and gently and safely with no harmful side effects,
Right,
not
right.
causing suppression. I mean, all of these things, you know, so it's like, I'm really hopeful that things will shift. And I think that, you know, Heather and I, you know, we talk a lot about quantum biology and like all that, everything is connected. Like you said, everything is one, right? So everything is
Right.
one with us, but we're also an open system to the quantum field and everything else, right? And I think that the more people who I don't know, clean their field, I guess is the way to say it, or strengthen their own field, the more that
Hmm.
we then improve like the collective, right? And this has an impact. And the more people who gain understanding and awareness of these things, the more it shifts. And I think maybe heading into the age of Aquarius might be good. And maybe we'll have some good shifts, right? So
Agreed. I think I agree with you.
well, thank you so much, Dr. Larry. Really appreciate you coming on and sharing your wisdom with our listeners. So
Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Best to you. Take care now.